You know, I've done multiple story times related to church, but there's a common theme I spot pretty easily throughout all the videos related to church. That would be being left out. I've never been too specific on it, I've simply referred to it as the conflict. But I've always wanted to address the conflict in its own story time, as it's very critical regarding my life. So today, I'm going to talk about the conflict at church. I'm Zach, and this is Storytime 16 on April 16, 2021. So the way this backstory will be organized is I'll discuss three backstories. The first will be about struggling with depression in 8th grade. The second will be on the post-depression period. And the third will be about why we joined this church in particular. Kind of unusual that I'm starting with three backstories, but these backstories will be important for you to understand why this whole situation really pisses me off. Anyways, onto the first backstory. Now, this first backstory is more directed to those who did not watch my story time on 8th grade. So if you'd like to watch that first, then go ahead. But if you don't feel like watching an hour 36 minute long video, then that's fine too, as I'll discuss all the backstory you need to know. So throughout 8th grade, I was bullied a lot. I shared almost all of my classes with bullies and very few classes with friends. I also was forced to sit with the bullies at lunch. Now, the reason for this was because of a policy at our school. So our school has a rule that states that you can only eat at the same tables as your second block, which in my case was the English. I had no friends other than one, but he was sitting at a table far away from me and could barely see me. And also his table was full. So, and not only that, but he also didn't do his homework, so that put him in the silent lunch table. So therefore, I was sitting with bullies. I tried to find the other available tables, but nobody would let me sit with them. So when the bullies decided to go away to sit at the tables where these people would not let me sit, I was by myself at my own table in front of hundreds of students. They did this on purpose so that I would be sitting there by myself while everyone looked at me wondering what the hell he's doing. So I was being left out and bullied at school, which caused me to have depression. Feeling like nobody gave a shit about me felt awful. What sucks is that I had a lot of friends in other classes, including friends from church, but they could not come help me because the school literally would not allow them to. As a result, my depression just got worse and worse until one day, being Thursday, March 8th, 2018, I just completely broke down, and at that point, I didn't even want to live anymore. It was just that horrible. My teachers found out about it after they overheard me making a threat. Around that night, I was admitted into the mental hospital, and I stayed there until Tuesday, March 13th, 2018. So I was left out a lot in 8th grade, and I almost even killed myself as well. But now, let's move on from the worst time period of my life to the best time of my life. So the post-depression period, meaning we are on backstory 2 now. So this time period lasted from when I got discharged from the hospital to the end of 2018. So while I was in the hospital, my parents, my teachers, and my principal had a meeting discussing how to basically prevent this from happening again. They decided to switch my classes so that I was with all of my friends, meaning I would have lunch with all of my friends, as well as my friends from church. It was a great idea, as my mental health skyrocketed since I was now being included and was no longer being bullied. But that's not exactly why the post-depression period was so good. I consider this time period to be amazing because great things seemed to happen every day left and right. Literally everything went my way. A couple examples include becoming closer with the friends, as well as people at church, going to Wilmington, North Carolina for a school trip, getting accepted at early college, getting baptized, starting early college, having the best summer of my life. It goes on. Now let's discuss the final backstory, church. So I mentioned becoming great friends with everyone at church during the post-depression period, but how exactly did I start going to this church? So the reason me and my friends moved here was because they had a larger and better youth overall than my old church. My old church did have a youth, but not only did nobody go to our school, but the youth pastor was also corrupt. So we moved to this church, where the youth pastor was much better, and most people went to my school at the time. I should know at the time, as I'm the only person at youth who even goes to early college. This all happened in May of 2017. But we didn't start youth until that July of 2017. I met many friends here and even gave my life to Christ in April of 2018, as well as getting baptized a month later. Unfortunately, the friendships didn't last long, which is what the conflict at church is all about. So the backstories mentioned here are important because they heavily reflect the conflict, and it also really helps you understand where I come from and why I feel the way about the whole situation. So now, let's get into the story time. To start, let's talk about Fuge 2018, as this is where the conflict began. It took place at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, between June 18th, 2018 to June 23rd, 2018. Mentally, it was during the post-depression period, so I was really hyped for this trip. I mean, I was going to be with my quote-unquote friends for 6 days. Unfortunately, that isn't what happened. So the first day, June 18th, 2018, we had to pick who we wanted to room with for the trip. I tried asking my friends if I could room with them, but they all had roommates. Therefore, I ended up being the only one without a roommate. Nobody ever thought about me. Yeah, that feeling is very shitty, that nobody was out of the 30 or 40 boys even thought about me. What's worse is that before we went, some of the boys actually told me they were excited to be with me on this trip. What happened to that? Damn, it really does suck. But what really pains me the most was that I was left out by the same people who included me in 8th grade after I struggled from depression from being left out. You know what these people are? They're fakes. They try to be one thing, but in reality, they're another. Assholes. So that's where this whole conflict began. By hearing that, you probably sound like I sound like an entire jackass, but I can prove you that I'm not a jackass. So now my youth pastor had to deal with one person not having a dorm. So his solution was to move me into a dorm with people. I would be without two people. I would be without a key and had to move a mattress in. I would basically be a second-class person. Damn. I think my youth pastor had the right idea, but it didn't really help solve the root of the issue. Well, I mean, it kind of did, but at the same time, not really. So one of the boys in my dorm actually felt sorry for me, and we became friends. The other really didn't care. However, the boy who felt sorry for me rarely went to church, so it ultimately didn't help. Not only that, but in November of 2020, he passed away. Everyone else at church were fakes. But now we reached a point where well, I wouldn't say everyone at my church, I'd say more my grade, by the way. But now, we reached a point where now my old friends became just plain assholes. So I had to move a mattress from another dorm to this dorm so I could sleep there. On my way moving the mattress, one boy questioned me and a few others started laughing at me. Holy shit, please learn to have some empathy. Yeah, clearly these people were not who they were in 8th grade. Throughout Fuge, we did a thing called site groups. I love these so much, as the people in my site group were probably the nicest people ever, and they always included me in everything. Nobody from my church was even a part of it, so what a steal. However, getting back from site groups was always tough, so we were always the first site group to go back to our dorms. However, remember, I don't have a key because I'm a second-class attendant, so every day I had to stand by the door waiting for one of my roommates to come in. And both of them were always in the last group, by the way, that came. It was extremely embarrassing and really just made me question if any planning was even done for this trip regarding rooming, because clearly there wasn't. Also, during this time, many boys also came back. They would, of course, make fun of me. Yeah, these heartless assholes really intended this to happen. Give me a break. Now let's move on to one final thing I want to mention at Fuge. So June 21st is my birthday. Therefore, at Fuge, I had to celebrate my 14th birthday. It was quite possibly the worst birthday I ever had. Absolute disaster. So something to note about me is that I hate the happy birthday song. Hated it when I was 4, hated it when I was 14, I hate it now at 16, and probably will forever hate it. So I got sung happy birthday twice that day. The first was by my site group, but they're really nice people, so I'll let it slide on them. However, every night we had around an hour of church group time, so everyone did a cliche surprise happy birthday. You know how it works. So everyone did this at church, did this to me. I get it's all good, but this really pissed me off. Not only are they singing me happy birthday, which by the way also escalated it farther, but they also are just automatically caring for me about me. Just 3 days before this, they left me out and laughed about it. So my question to these people, what the hell were you doing? You just automatically care about me 3 days after leaving me out, treating me like shit? This is exactly why I have conflict with these people. They're fakes who leave me out and pretend like they care a couple days later. So Fuge overall was a disaster. We left Nashville and headed to Charlotte on June 23rd, which was also one of the best days of my life. But it's unrelated to the story time, so I'll save it for another video. So I do actually have a theory to why the boys left me out. So that May, I got a letter stating that I got accepted at early college high school. The boys disapproved of this, while I approved of it. As a rising senior right now, I can safely say that this decision to go here was amazing. However, this meant that I was no longer going to school with anyone at church, so I could see where these people come from. but wouldn't that mean they would want to talk to me more since they weren't going to see me at school? I mean, they left me out at Fuge, so the answer is a pretty obvious no. So throughout freshman year, I tried to recover the friendship I had with everyone. Well, I tried, it didn't work out, and I just ultimately gave up in around May or June of 2019, which I'll mention when I get there. Now, speaking of school, let's talk about Sunday school. So we were divided up by grade. So I was with all the fellow freshmen for Sunday school. Throughout freshman year, I tried to talk, but I, of course, was left out. However, I can't really put all the blame on them, as I will admit that I often sat in the back and was on my phone, mostly texting Ryan, so I have to put some blame on myself. But I did often try to join in with the group, but that also failed. So I still hold myself somewhat accountable, but I also hold them accountable as well. Another thing too was that it was extremely hard to talk to others for two reasons. First would be my personality. I'm an introvert. I'm shit at being social. So already that's a heavy weight on me to talk to someone. The second would be that I literally had nothing in common with these people. I go to a different school than everyone. I also play different video games than everyone. I wasn't interested in sports either. Like, I could care less about the high school football match from last Friday. And overall, I was just completely different from everyone. Yeah, it was hard. I should note that the freshman girls were also here, but considering absolutely no girl wants anything to do with me, I just didn't even bother with them. Damn, I was in a pretty shitty spot, and kinda still am. So now, let's move on to January of 2019. This would be when I participated in Winter Retreat 2019. I already did a story time on this, but to get the gist of it, it went just like Fuge. I got left out and it went horribly. I attended it to try to maybe become better friends with everyone, but it just ultimately backfired. Now, in March of 2019, I actually asked my youth pastor if I could switch Sunday school since it clearly was going pretty terribly. He said no, since he didn't like the idea of different grades being in the Sunday school. So therefore, I just stayed in my Sunday school with the same people that left me out at Fuge. Finally, around sometime in May or June of 2019, I just gave up. These people clearly didn't want anything to do with me, so I'm just basically going to leave myself out. So that's what I did. I went from being left out to purposely leaving myself out and becoming antisocial. I started this practice as a rising sophomore, and I still do it today as a rising senior. It's honestly kind of crazy I've been leaving myself out of everything for 2 years, but I'm at least glad I'm not hanging out with a bunch of fakes who don't really care about me. And you know what's so funny? After a couple weeks leaving myself, a couple of the boys literally tried to talk to me. Yeah, you left me out for an entire year, and now you want to talk? Goodness gracious me, y'all people must think I'm stupid or something. Well, here's the answer. No, I'm not stupid. And that kind of brings us to today in my current situation. So right now, I'm obviously in the 11th grade. Interestingly though, I'm going to be graduating this December since I'm so far ahead. Therefore, I'll be off to college in January. So that leaves me with only 8 months with these people. But what exactly is the current situation before I get to that? So for about 10 months, we did not go to church because of the coronavirus pandemic. However, in January, we began going back to church. My parents already knew that I was left out at church and also began purposely leaving myself out, but they never really thought too much. However, since I went back to Sunday school for the first time in almost a year, they were more wondering if I was talking to anyone. So they'd ask this question every day in the car on the way back from church. I don't like to lie, so I just simply told them the truth. No, I didn't talk to anyone. They'd ask if anyone came out to talk with me. Nobody does that to me. They know I don't want to talk to them, so I just simply say no. I should note that yes, my parents do know how I was left out at Fuge. I told them when I got back. And now, how I tried to make it up in freshman year and how horribly that went. Recently, though, it seems like my parents have been a bit concerned about me not talking to anyone at church, and I can completely understand why. They know how it was like for me in 8th grade. They don't want this to happen again. They also tell me to try to talk to others. But there are 3 reasons I don't talk to others. One is that I don't have anything to talk about. Remember, these are the same people as the people from freshman Sunday school. So I have absolutely nothing to talk about because I'm so drastically different from everyone. Second is because I don't want to talk to them. There are fakes after all, and the same people who left me out at Fuge when we were rising freshmen. You think they automatically want to talk to me now that we're rising seniors? Hell no. The third and final reason is that it just isn't worth it. I'm only 8 more months with these people. If I had, let's say, an entire year and a half, then sure, but I'm graduating early. There's no point in talking with these people. After 8 months, we're probably just never going to see each other again. My parents have also told me to try to find another Sunday school, and the same reasons also apply here, except for the second one, obviously. So that's really where the situation is right now. Now let's discuss the future. So next week, specifically on April 24th, 2021, I'm going to do D-Now 2021. So I did D-Now 2018 with all the boys my grade, but since we have conflict now, I'm going to do this with the freshmen, as I actually have a couple friends who are freshmen. And also, I'm going to be the oldest in the group, by the way. I didn't include this in my script, but basically today I found out where my group was, and literally the oldest person is me, and the second oldest is a freshman. So I'm pretty hyped about that. So that's what's really next for church. I'm also actually going to do a story time on it April 30th, so you can be prepared for that one. But after that, I have nothing planned for church. If surprises do happen, then I might mention them in a future story time, but otherwise, that's really all I got planned. Of course, in 8 months, I'm going to be going to college, so that'll be where I pretty much leave everyone. So now I kind of want to do a Q&A, I can't talk. So now I want to do what I did with my story time on Swim from like 8 weeks ago, and that would be a Q&A. I think this will better help you understand my take as well as allow me to give you more insight on the conflict. So first question, why does this conflict mean so much to me, and why am I so pissed off about it? Obviously, one reason would be for me having depression and from being left out in 8th grade. This depression put me in such an awful spot, but I'm not depressed anymore. Being left out hurts me a lot more now that I went through that. Being left out makes me feel the same feelings I had when I struggled with depression, and that's why I take this whole situation much more seriously than people think I should. Next question, do you want this conflict to be resolved? I'd say my answer to this question is rather interesting. Most people will want this conflict to be resolved so they can have someone to talk to. I, however, don't really want this conflict to be resolved. You have to remember that these people are fakes. They're just going to put me through the same bullshit they did when we were rising freshmen. They're going to pretend like they are my friends, but in reality, they are not my friends. They'll just leave me out again and I'll be back to square one. Not just that, but it honestly just isn't even worth resolving. Remember, I'm going to be off to college in 8 months. More than likely, I'll very rarely see them again, if ever. So therefore, resolving this conflict isn't even worth it, as after 8 months, I'm no longer going to be with them. The only time I think I'll ever see them is when I'm like at home from college on breaks. But other than that, I won't even see them, so what's the point? If someone not in the 11th grade went up to talk to you, would you talk to them? So this is interesting, as I honestly don't know. This has never happened, as remember, the youth don't really care much about me, and I don't really care much about them either. But if someone was not in the 11th grade came up to me, I think I might talk to them. If it was someone in the 11th grade, then I'm not even going to deal with it. They had an entire year to make it up, and they didn't. They also left me out, and I absolutely hate fakes, as stated before. But if they were not in 11th grade, then I might talk to them. It really depends. It also kind of depends on my mood. Have you ever considered talking to others not in your grade? I never really considered talking to others. While I honestly don't have problems with anyone outside the 11th grade, I still don't talk with anyone since I just feel uncomfortable. Yeah. Saying I feel uncomfortable talking to someone at church is definitely something I would never think I would ever say. But that's the point where I'm at. But once again, it really doesn't matter because in 8th grade, I'm just going to be off to college, so I really don't care about talking to anyone. I'm comfortable by simply doing the same thing I've done for the past 2 years, isolating myself from everyone. It's just 8 more months. Are you still going to go to church? Yes, absolutely. I love being a Christian, and my relationship with Christ will never change. I got saved when I was 13 years old. I still have the same love for him today that I had for him 3 years ago. More than likely, though, I probably will very rarely do Sunday school when I'm an adult. So more than likely, it'll just be me going to church. So that's all I got for today's story time. Next week on April 23rd, 2021, I'll be talking about my proudest school projects. Anyways, that's all I got for today's video, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!